welcome to Property Quorum. Well, we're a little light today, but I tell you what, some of the stalwarts of Property Quorum are here, albeit missing Juliet, which I hope will make later. Hamish McLay, the Scottish Conveyor, of course, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home. We are joined by friend of the show, Wendy Gibson. You may have seen her from Property Matters earlier in the week, and of course myself. And we're talking about all topics that can affect and do affect the sales of property and the process of property in this country. And today's topic is no different, really, in that respect. This one is the new council powers to inspect rentals. Goodness gracious. With the Renters Reform Act, this is quite significant. And obviously, to start us off, Hamish McLay.
Well, it's always good to see a step forward. It's going to be productive. We do have a few challenges, and trust me to bring the challenges in before we get to the benefits. The councils are struggling at this moment anyway with staff. We've actually sort of found that with the cutbacks, the fact that we're becoming unitary authorities, so you were speaking about, funnily enough, yesterday during the IPSA, our Association of Independent Property Search Agents podcast, is how boundaries changing, having an impact on the way the information is gathered, presented, and obviously losing experts within the field. And one of the things that they are doing when combining the councils together is reducing the numbers available. Now, we know, unfortunately, the fewer the staff, the fewer the services they can actually maintain at that high level. And asking the staff to actually start calling in and attending, if you like, sort of rented properties, at this moment in time, they struggle to actually drop in on their own properties to establish the standard that they are at. So I think what we've got to look at is how can we make this step a progressive one? There are possibilities with it, and I think sadly we've seen this with the Labour Party. They came in with great right housing, and that hasn't happened in the way that we would have liked to have seen it. And is this another one of those exercises which we've said this is what we want to do? However, can we get it to work? And is it going to benefit? Is it going to benefit those very people that it's meant to be working for? Now, because Wendy's got tremendous experience working in the background with housing associations. Chris, too, has got experience because that's what he's doing with his HMOs, his houses of multiple occupation, trying to put the appropriate, if you like, properties together so people can actually sort of have somewhere to reside at an appropriate standard. I mean, we have professionals with us, but does it mean that this is going to help our professional standards?
Well, a good question. And Chris, dare I ask, is it step forward, step back, or is it step sideways?
I honestly think it's a gimmick. Now, let me explain why.
Sideways then.
Well, the local authorities already have substantial powers of inspection under the Housing Act, 2004. So it's 2 decades old legislation that they can go and look at properties that they think are a potential risk. And tenants have all sorts of rights in terms of being able to report those issues to the local authority and flag them for their environmental health officers to come out and identify those issues and then work with the landlords in a cooperative and productive way to make sure that the properties are in a good and fit state for use. Now, the legislation that's being proposed here, I've got all sorts of challenges with. It's massive state overreach into the privacy of people's lives. If I was renting a property and I had some council official, some busybody turning up on my doorstep saying, "I'm coming into your property to do X, Y, and Z," I would go bananas. Now, there's long established legislation, case law on the statute books, going back to 1765, called Entick v. Carrington, which is about keeping the state and the state's business at arm's length and maintaining people's right to privacy. And this flies completely against that. That's still on the statute books. And so I'm not sure how this piece of gimmicky legislation, which is massive privacy overreach, is going to play out, other than people telling the people trying to draft this ridiculous legislation to go away.
So, what do you think? The next is the thought police in Brazil and so on.
This is it. We're in it now. The people drafting this type of legislation is being drafted by the people who have that mentality. And I don't know where they're getting it from, because we have inalienable human rights to privacy. So how does this connect with that?
Wendy, apparently we have no rights to privacy anymore. It's not 1984, it's 2084, and you've arrived too soon. What say you?
I completely agree with Chris's opinion on all of this. And it's not the landlords who this is being touted as being something to keep landlords in line. It actually, I completely agree with Chris. This is not going to affect landlords at all. These are going to affect the people who living in these homes, the tenants themselves, who supposedly have a right to privacy and also a right to unfettered enjoyment of their homes. And I completely agree with the fact that, similar legislation has already existed for over 20 years. What I find so befuddling is the fact that the existing legislation is very patchy in how it's been enforced. But rather than actually step up and improve the enforcement of it, what the government has decided to do is that law to them is inadequate and not working, which is wholly untrue. It's got to do with the enforcement of that law. So their solution to the problem is not to actually enforce the law, but to actually create new laws, which actually then step over our rights of privacy, exactly as Chris said.
Wow. Juliet, welcome to the show. Lovely to see you. Have you heard some of this going on? Because Chris has postulated that this latest grenade is nothing more than a broach to people's right to privacy. What say you?
Absolutely, I agree. I completely agree. I mean, from the snippets that I've heard, it is a breach of privacy, and it's almost as if it's quite punitive as well. Lump or like it, you haven't got a choice. And that, to me, when you live in a democratic society, is a freedom that you deserve to have, and shouldn't be restricted in any which way. And of course, there's a balancing act, but I think that's, it's taking it a bit too far.
I've always been told that politics is a bit like a circle, and at the far extremes of it, they look much the same. So on the far right, you've got the state wanting to control every aspect of it so that you stay in line. And on the far left, it's much the same. Are we heading towards state-sponsored control of every aspect of our lives, or is this just an irrelevance?
Well, it's one thing if you never had it and you didn't know what it was to enjoy it. But the fact that it's now being reneged and removed and whittled down is something that everybody's going to feel. The fact that people haven't even got the choice to then decide, look, this doesn't work for me anymore. I want to pack up shop and leave this country without having to incur 20%, sort of tax or fine or whatever it is. It is very punitive. And I was always taught, like, within our democratic society, irrespective of whichever government, there would be a balancing act, and this is by far, the scales are tipped on one end. And I think every realm of society, whether you speak to the middle class or whatever other class, everyone's feeling that pinch. It is not something that we've asked for. The government seem to have this socialist view, and they just deciding that as the lawmakers, we're the ones who are just going to have to live with this without even having an opinion or a right to, oppose it. And that is just, I don't think anyone, who voted this current government or otherwise, this was not something that we signed up for.
I can't believe anyone signed up for this. Hamish, have we got state-sponsored intrusion? Is that what this is?
Well, it's an interesting aspect, really, because I'd be rather inclined myself, not them in that particular position, but if somebody came up and said they're from the council, I'm saying, oh, how do you do? How can I help you?
Yes.
And they say, oh, I need to see into something. No, you don't.
It's
know,
absurd.
this is my private. This is my, this is my sort of private. Unless am I renting from you? Well, no, you're not. Well, what is it you want? Why? And I think therefore it's back to the same kind of thing. It's up to the individual to actually. I don't know how it stands. I mean, Juliet might sort of know one aspect of this, but whatever. It seems that all three. This is aspects I hadn't actually thought of. I did believe that this government was so much of what they're trying to do is very intrusive. Like you have to have an ID card, and it's a little bit like we've given the powers to the BBC about whether you're allowed to receive sort of allowed to watch television or not, and then we want these ID cards, and now all of a sudden, because your property's rented, we can actually sort of come and batter your door down or endeavour to. I think the rights and the divinity perhaps override it. I would have liked to have seen the standards improved a far, far better way of actually sort of doing it. And it's like Juliet's mentioned, it's a punitive attitude to the whole thing. It's like sort of Wendy sort of says, I mean, in fact, all three who've actually sort of spoken have said this same sort of type of aspect. We really don't like rogue landlords. They don't do anybody any good at all, other than the rogue landlords. I mean, they're quite happy with it. But this is not, in a way, I don't perceive this as being any solution at all to the situation that this government seems to be, the obsession they have with rogue landlords. They're not too fussed about rogue tenants. They're perfectly all right, it would appear. But there's something or other. I think I seem to recollect actually our sort of head of government deciding that anybody that had a property wasn't a worker or something like that.
Oh dear.
There was something about that. So it's a strange thing. But yes, it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens. Like one of those things, aspects that goes on in sort of Scotland, for example. If they try in sort of Scotland, the wily Scots ain't going to let them in.
No, I think there'll be a lot of rattling of cables if that happened. Juliet, let me come straight back to you. Can you respond to Hamish? I saw you raise your hand halfway through that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, look at the cost element as well. Who's going to fund these inspections and where's that money going to come from? So why not?
Well, from you, Juliet, from you and me, I think.
Well, and if you haven't got the money to give, then what then? I mean, the reality is, the inspections are going to have to be funded some which way. The councils are already understaffed. So how do they intend to implement this? This is one of those things where it's upsetting the nation as a whole, or it's upsetting the average landlord who's already got to pay, self-assessment. They've got to pay for all of these electronic certificates, gas safety certificates, etc. Now they are literally going to have to pay for some of this funding for these inspections, and what good is going to come out of it? So instead of the government putting in these policies, perhaps think, well, if we had an extra pot of money, could we not invest that in more affordable housing? Could we not invest that so the outcome is actually achieved? So, it's almost as if dish out all of these punitive measures, but then what are the repercussions? And I think funding and costs are sort of an important factor in all of this. They currently haven't got the budget for it, so we're just going to have to fund it via some additional council tax or something, which... Again, it goes back to my adjective. It's punitive.
Chris, dare I say, I'm just going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second. Given that the ruminations in the current government about a potential leadership contest, is this just a way to get us all outraged so we're looking over there when it's all happening over here?
That's very possible, Gareth. And I'm listening to people. I'm changing my mind a little bit on the gimmick angle that I started with. When you start to zoom out, you could potentially see a bigger play. So the wider play at the moment is forcing the landlords out, the more amateur landlords out of the PRS. So they make up 84% of the market at this point in time. And there's obviously a decade's worth of track record of previous and current governments trying to corporatize this particular part of the market, the private rental sector. You could see this as just another ploy to rile the landlords. So even though even though it's going to obviously affect the tenants, and it's obviously completely at odds with any sorts of rights to privacy that we have, which were fundamental and we're born with. It could obviously never get through. So the only other play really is it's just trying to annoy the landlords.
Trying to irritate the landlords. Wendy, is this a further play towards the Socialist Manifesto?
It certainly feels like it, but there's something I want to just highlight here, which feels a little bit concerning to me. So years ago, you had these really awful landlords who would buy properties with sitting tenants in and then intimidate them to leave these properties. And laws were then put in place to prevent this from happening. So landlords have now been made to have a much more hands-off approach and give a right of privacy to their tenants and a right of not being bothered and harassed. But what's now happening with these new laws coming into play is the harassment's now going to be done by the councils themselves.
Oh, state-sponsored harassment, is it now?
Absolutely. Can you imagine if you are, say, a single woman living on your own with children and perhaps don't speak English very well, and suddenly somebody completely unexpected knocks on your door and tells you that demands to you that they come into your property? From a safety point of view, you're not going to be very happy about that, and you might not be able to communicate that to the person coming to inspect. They're completely out of the blue. You have no idea who they are, what they're wanting to do in the property, and you are a vulnerable person. So how is that not harassment?
It does appear to be that way. Chris, before I pass back to Hamish for the last word, it does seem to me that we are moving away and firmly towards the corporatized generation rent, so popular in to be found in Germany. Is that? I'm trying to find silver linings here. If we, as you say, zoom out a bit, does that potentially mean a benefit to tenancy further down the line as it becomes less and less affordable to, in fact, get a foot on the property ladder anyway?
No. You're reducing competition. You're strangling the market to an even greater extent than it already is strangled for the lack of supply. You're consolidating the power in the hands of a very, very small minority of people. It doesn't benefit people. It doesn't benefit the masses. No, not at all. But it is moving that way, and there's a slow creep going that direction. I think it may take a couple of decades, a couple of generations till it's fully there. But it is the way that it's going at this point in time.
Although the way in which the opinion polls are going for the current government, we may have a different complexion inside number 10, and the houses are perhaps going to be even more divided than they are now. Hamish McLay, please say something that will take us home and lift our spirits.
I think I'm a little bit stuck there. My concern is, and we all know here that my sort of involvement, along with you, Gareth, is the work we're trying to do on cladding matters to draw the attention to the unfortunate position that some people have found themselves in. And even within that, when we look at flats as a particular sort of problem, we find we've got a situation here where, if you like, we've got building inspectors inspecting a property and sort of saying it's unsafe and it was built illegally built, and the councillor, the head honcho, the head councillor saying, well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's unsafe. As far as we're concerned, we're perfectly neutral and it's perfectly sort of okay. Now, are we giving leave to these particular sort of councillors? Because we're finding they're getting very, very political at the moment in terms of what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve. Is this giving leave to council, not just sort of like has been indicated by all three, the other three within the panel today, that the rights of privacy have gone? Is this giving leave to the council to think, well, I know somebody who I want to mess about with, so I will go and automatically inspect that property because I don't like that landlord? Are we giving them Should it be somebody outside of the council? Should it be an independent person? Is that council member, because certainly the council member that we speak of, or many of the council members we speak of within Royal Artillery Keys region, they really are not in any way qualified to make a judgment on the safety of a property, yet somehow they are overriding all of the experts.
Wow. So what we've got massive council overreach, promoted by the state, and confusion reigns supreme, as it were. I thank you so much, Hamish. You didn't deliver and provide me with a silver lining. I'm most disappointed, but we'll have to go with what we've got, I guess. Thank you once again, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club, and of course Hamish McLay, Lord and Master from Search and Convey. And any of you out there who are as outraged as I certainly feel at the moment, if you want to be yet more outraged, watch out and tune into Cladding Matters this Friday, where we'll be talking more of the same, I'm sure, but also talking more about the effects that the current climate is having on affecting change as far as cladding is concerned, and making these homes safe and reliable and usable so they can actually sell, buy, or even insure the damn things. Until next time, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and for goodness sake, look after that mental health. Until next time, bye-bye.